The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Spouses Talking Houses with husband and wife real estate team Jennifer and Brian Frost. Everything you want to know about buying, selling, investing, and owning property. So let's get real about real estate.
Hello, and welcome to Spouses Talking Houses. I'm Jennifer.
I'm Brian.
And today we have a guest with us, our friend and coworker, Paula Martin of the Paula Martin Real Estate Group. Did I get the name of your real estate group right?
Yeah, the Paula Martin Group.
Okay, good.
Powered by Keller Williams.
Powered by Keller Williams. Excellent. Today, we're going to get real about a Frank Lloyd Wright house in our own backyard in Manchester, New Hampshire that Paula has recently sold. But before we dive into that, I just want to say it was great to see you at the chili cook-off last night.
I know, that was fun.
Wasn't
oh my
that
gosh.
fun?
I think we had 10 different chilies to try
10
out.
or 11 maybe, yeah.
Yeah, we had 10 chilies. We had a margarita machine.
Doesn't everybody have a margarita machine?
I don't have a
I don't
margarita
think so.
machine.
I think I should.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a little loud for my taste.
The margarita
the
machine?
blender.
Yes. It
Yes.
was just like every time he made the ice, it was even over the brokers talking. So, I mean, I know it's loud.
Yeah.
And then you, of course, added music because it wasn't loud enough.
Yeah, exactly. We want
Yeah.
to get as much sound in there as possible.
Yeah.
So.
Let me get out my tiny violin that I keep on hand for Brian.
All good.
All good. And
I came in second.
you came in second.
Yeah.
And you were
Far behind. But,
you were super impressed with Marge's cookies.
oh, yes, I was. That was a
Yeah.
work of art.
Were those the little chili ones?
Yeah, the
Yes.
little chili ones.
Yeah. We the abundance of talent is
I
just
It is
it's
great.
amazing. Yeah.
It is great. So we have so many wonderful cooks and wonderful eaters and drinkers and talkers. Nothing like getting a room full of real estate agents
Great culture.
together.
It is. Yeah.
Anyway, so the Kalil House, that was super exciting for me just in proximity to you who actually listed it and sold it. But before we talk about that, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about luxury home marketing. I mean, how do you get to be a luxury home specialist? What kind of skills and training and experience does that involve?
Well, I think you evolve through the process. For maybe some people would target it, but I think over time it's just you get your experience and you get stronger at understanding the market and understanding customer service. And I think understanding how to extract values, because when you get into the higher priced homes, there's not a bunch of them. So we've got to figure out how to take
And they get more and more unique.
super unique. Yeah. And so you have to figure out your target market, how you're going to get that information out. And so I will say I went to training in Austin, Texas this last year, which was the Institute for Certified Luxury Marketing. And I'm also a member of Keller Williams Luxury International. So those are trainings that you have access to a lot of resources as well as venues to be able to expand the marketing out internationally.
Yep.
And those things are really helpful. And I think you learn that luxury clients may be slightly different. I mean, they're all different, but if we were dealing with a basketball player, they may not want their house in MLS. They may not want all their pictures and all those things. So just listening to what their needs are, what they want, and then getting it sold.
And being able to network with the other luxury market agents, because like you said, your pool of buyers might not be local.
I think in many cases, it's probably not. In this case, this was such a unique house. This wasn't necessarily a house that someone was going to live in. They might just want it, right? And so that meant it could be someone in Taiwan, right? It could be anywhere in the world.
I remember when you called me and asked me, as an appraiser,
oh gosh,
where would I be looking for comps? And I told you I'd basically be looking on the entire northeast coast.
Right, the world. Yeah,
the world, but
the world.
Yeah. You must have spent a lot of time on pricing.
I did spend a lot of time on pricing, and you're the only person I talked to from an appraisal perspective. But when I was first contacted, I had I knew what Frank Lloyd Wright homes were. I know mid-century. I love mid-century. So that part of it was easier, but I had to go drive by the house. I had to look it up and then see that it was a Usonian Automatic, one of only 7 ever built in the world. So there's going to be a lot of comps for it. And and then, so what I did is I went into Frank Lloyd Wright Conservancy is a website, Save Right, and they have all of their houses there. So I had to start by just identifying all the houses, identifying the Usonian Automatics, and then I did go to Zillow too. I went anywhere I could because I had to try to figure out what's the square footage, how long was it on the market, how many times was it on the market, how many times did it get reduced, was it a fixer-upper, was it overlooking Los Angeles?
Right.
And then, so I have a very big Excel spreadsheet, and I just kept adding all this information to it and then trying to distill down some commonality that I could use. And then, of course, I had to just look at Manchester and go, okay, well, what's a 1,400 square foot 2-bedroom house cost in Manchester?
800,000, right?
Right?
Yeah.
But I needed that number because I
Right.
needed to at least go, okay, if it was just a regular house, this is what this would be. And then how much more is it worth?
Because of the name and the history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also the authenticity of it because it had not been changed.
It was an absolute time capsule.
Yeah.
So it was built in 1955, and all of the furniture, all of the accoutrements that originally came with it from Frank Lloyd Wright were there.
Right.
The pillows, everything was there. So there was a lot to say about that. There aren't really many houses that have changed hands, and I think 6 have changed hands this year, including last year, including ours. Arguably, I think this was in the best condition of anything that I had seen change hands. I hadn't physically been through everyone, but just doing all the research we did.
That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was.
It was in very good condition, or it is in very good condition.
Yeah.
And they clearly loved it and wanted to preserve it.
So it's a family that had inherited it, and I think they struggled with, wanting to keep it in the family, and did someone want to take it? And in the end, just nobody was in the right place in their life to take it on. In the family, Dr. Tufik and Mildred Kalil had it built, and then they bequeathed it to their brother John. And when John passed away, that was when we were called in to interview to market it.
So it was still with the original family at the time that you guys got called in. And how did the Kalils come about getting a Frank Lloyd Wright house built?
So 2 doors up is another Frank Lloyd Wright house, which is extremely unusual, certainly in New England. In Cincinnati, there's some that are close by. And that one's owned by the Courier Museum, and it's called the Zimmerman House.
The Zimmerman House, yeah.
And the Kalils were friends with the Zimmermans, and when they got their house built, when they had said, gee, we really think this is quite unique and we'd like to have one of these built. So they reached out to Frank Lloyd Wright, and they met with him, and then they sent down the plans. Frank Lloyd Wright sent them the plans. Of course, this house is nothing really like the Zimmerman house.
Completely different, yeah.
Yeah, they're both Usonians, but this is a Usonian Automatic, so it's the block style house. So I think they were surprised when they saw it, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
But they still thought it was beautiful and they wanted it. So they moved forward with that, and Morton Delson, who was the on-site architect, was there the whole time to go through the whole process. I had a couple of things that were just really awesome, which was family members for the builder and the contractor had contacted me. They wanted to come see it. They'd never seen the house.
That's awesome.
And that was Carmen Palermo, and they just were inside it. We hosted an event so they could all come and meet each other and see the house, and it was wonderful. It was really wonderful to see, and they were like, wonderful. Oh, my papa made this house.
Yeah. So what is a Usonian?
So Usonian is an acronym, and
it's a house for the people, right? For the common people?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was something that they could just build. The thought process was that they could just get a kit, and they could just make these blocks, and they could just build this house.
Right.
So there was only one that actually the owners did that, and that was out in Washington State. Everyone else that did it, they hired
Right.
someone to do
Right.
it. I mean, it's pretty exacting if you think about it. When you build with wood, if something was a little off, not plumb, not quite level, you could work yourself through it. But this is cinder block, this block. So, and it's stacked. It has a rebar in it. And in fact, it's so square and level and fabulous. It's just a
is
fabulous
fabulous.
home. Yeah.
So Usonian, I think, was Frank Lloyd Wright's affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the automatic part was that it could be almost a DIY.
Mm-hmm.
That was the theory.
In theory.
That was the
Yeah.
theory. And obviously that there's only 7 of them in the world. So
Yeah.
it didn't quite work out that way. Yeah. It is cool to go through the house and to see all the different blocks and then the mixture of the wood and the blocks. The condition of the house, I mean, how did somebody live there and not make any changes?
Well, I couldn't answer that because I don't, but I think
Right.
that both families or people that lived there, there was never any children that grew up in it, which might be why it was in such fabulous condition.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But I think that it just was so perfect to live in, the big open living room with the coffered ceilings and the smaller kitchen, the Usonian workstation. It really felt right. And the way that all the furniture is made is it could be moved here or there. So it was interchangeable. So I think they were just very comfortable with it. I will say that the people, once we brought it to market, that were interested in it, they wanted it just the way it was too. They didn't want to change anything.
Right.
The only thing I will say is one very interested party just wanted to know that they could run their hairdryer. As long as they could run their hairdryer, they were going to be good.
Yeah,
and they could.
Right.
They could. But a fair question because it's 1955, so it's slightly different. But the condition of it was fabulous. The owners did a fair amount of work, but it wasn't like in disrepair. It's just that Usonians were very famous for their roofs not being watertight because it's a flat roof.
Right.
So
In New England, not great. Yeah.
No, and these just kind of across the board, just the design on that had been a little questionable. So the Kalil family did go ahead and consult earlier on with Usonian out of Boston, which is an architectural engineering firm, to go in and evaluate the house with a main focus on the roof.
Yeah.
And they went forward with doing an entirely state-of-the-art flat rubber membrane.
Yeah.
We could get into the fancy words, but
Yeah.
roof that was going to be watertight.
You had a representative from that firm at one of the events, and I got to talk to her, and it was really fascinating. But they specialize in exteriors, and they specialize in historic preservation, and there's copper involved in the gutters, and I certainly don't remember it all, but it was very, very, very interesting.
It was because there's a central tower, and so they had to. The way it had been done before, the water came down and it kind of splashed on the central tower, and that was where some of the water had gotten through. So they had to bring that up, and they had to seal it off with a state-of-the-art product. And then, yes, it had all copper flashing all around the edges of the soffits of the house. It was just gorgeous when it was finished.
Yeah.
They also redid a wall out back, which was just a decorative wall off the back patio, and they had Stone and Lime come in from outside of Boston. That was also a historical restoration company that it took them quite a long time to get a mixture that was the right consistency, the right color. It has like a mica fleck in it. So they would come up with samples, and they recast the block so that they could make that wall, and that was also gorgeous. And then they did a lot of little things like just re-energizing the lights, making sure the electric, they had a, not exactly a buried oil tank, but it was.
Oh, that's right. It was in the garden bed. But behind a retaining wall.
Yeah.
Right.
So we knew that moving forward, a potential buyer was going to ask about it. I mean, it was encased in the ground. It wasn't in the ground, but it was in the planter bed. So they did go forward and have it evaluated, excavated. There was nothing about it that was wrong, but just put a brand new one in.
Right.
And that was a lot of the things we did. We just looked at it to make it ready for market.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So it is on a slab, which is part of why the oil tank is outside.
Yep.
And I noticed that your utility area, your washer dryer area, that stuff was very tight by modern standards.
Well, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
so you're on a slab, so it's all radiant heat. It's all original. The floors are all Cherokee red, which is the Frank Lloyd Wright coloring. The kitchen, that was for his designs. That was fine for it to be
Right,
small.
yeah,
It wasn't
yeah.
like today's style, which is to have a big center island and
Correct, yeah.
all of that. So it's tighter, but I think if somebody had bought it that was going to live in it, you could have made some minor adjustments probably to do that. And I think anybody that would be attracted to it would be very much very simple in their lifestyle.
Right. Right.
If it's somebody that really needed a lot of closet space and a lot of area, this really wasn't going to be the house for them, and they wouldn't have been attracted to it.
Right. Right. There was also a little office studio in a separate
Guest
building.
house.
Yeah.
Guest house. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's 264 square feet, built the same way with all the block, and it was actually built originally as an in-law, but it never really got finished. So it was always really a shed.
Glorified shed.
Yeah, a very nice shed. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it had rough plumbing, sewer, and electric in it. And, realistically, we thought it would be just the most fabulous office,
Yeah.
studio.
Oh, right.
I
Yeah.
mean, what a beautiful place. I mean, the glass just opens up and the light just cascades into that room, as it does in that whole house.
That whole house captures
Yeah,
the
it
light.
just
Yeah.
filters through gently and in just the most magical way.
And a lot of those classic Frank Lloyd Wright features in this house are now so commonplace in our current homes that we don't realize how groundbreaking it was at the time.
You're absolutely right. I mean, so all of the wood is all Philippine mahogany. You open up the closet doors, the lights come on.
Yep.
It has a sunken tub with a shower. The fireplace, the way it's laid out, many of the things, and then the big open concept.
Absolutely.
We've kind of gone back to that when you think about what a lot of people will call a jewel box house, which is a smaller house with all of the niceties that perhaps somebody that's downsizing would go to. They still want a beautiful house. They just don't need, 4 bedrooms and 4,000 square feet anymore, but they want all of that nice stuff, and they want the flexibility to move the furniture this way when the whole family comes and move it back this way when the family's not there.
I agree 100%. When you're downsizing, you don't want to downgrade. You don't want to go back to your first house.
Yeah.
You just want a smaller house, but you don't want to give up.
More functional.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's actually one of the bigger problems still in the market is,
I agree.
I'm always, when we're talking to builders, encouraging them to put together these ranch-style homes with this upscale feature, even though they cost more to build than a colonial. But, the market, really, that's what the market wants.
It's true.
A
It's true.
large part of the market.
I would buy one.
Exactly. So
No,
wait.
I mean, we just redid our kitchen, but we
Yeah.
don't need, for my wife and myself, 3,200 square feet. But
Right.
I don't want to go smaller and then give up
Exactly.
some of the features and amenities.
Exactly. The resistance on the builder's part is it's a much more expensive home per square foot to give that nice quality in a one level versus a typical colonial, and their fear is that they're not going to sell it or they're going to lose money on it. Yeah,
I can't understand.
but we have tons of people who end up custom building
They're
that.
still building these huge colonials without a first floor master.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
how much more expensive is that?
Well, it's not though,
That's-
right? Because it's all based on foundation and on roof.
That's
so
what I'm saying.
if the roof and foundation in a ranch, that's where your real costs are. But the colonial is less money to put up. But I would agree with you. I think the ranch is the most desirable, but the second most popular, in my opinion, is when you have like a nice cape and you
Sure,
have
I
the
was gonna
first
say,
floor,
right.
and then you have the second floor with a suite, right, with 2 more
Right.
bedrooms and a full bath
Correct.
upstairs.
Yeah.
I sold one that had the barn door going across, and it was all gasket sealed. So you didn't have to use it unless your family came.
Right.
And then if you had the nice bonus of a walkout basement that you could finish, your family can all come and be with you. And then when they
Sure.
leave, you've still got this this smaller footprint that's manageable and you're not heating the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Makes total sense.
All right, I'm going to get back to the Kalil House, though.
It was Brian's fault.
It was. It's fine.
Okay. Sorry.
And we're in agreement on that. So when you were looking at and competing for the job of marketing this home, what were you looking at? Public relations, whether to auction it, what to do for websites, events. Walk us through a little bit of that.
So I actually interviewed 4 times with the family, and it took us 6 months.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things to bring forward because, of course, trying to get a number. And I think they were in the same position, right? What's this house worth?
Right.
And, funny thing is you would talk to some people when we listed it and say, we're listing it for $850,000. And some people would say, is that all?
Right.
And then some people would go, what? That's 1,400 square feet.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I thought I must be in a good place then.
Yeah.
So I think
I had both of those reactions simultaneously. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody did.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was a good number. And you always, to me, especially with something like this is like a collection. This is like a Picasso or it's a Frank Lloyd Wright house. So if we expanded the market and we were very purposeful in how we got it out there, it was going to bring what it was supposed to bring.
Right.
So that did bring up 2 different options. We have a background in auctions, so we did say we could do what's called a transparent offer platform, which would mean that we would either bring a number forward or not. There was a lot of flexibility in this conversation, but we would make it open. So let's say we started it at a certain number, and on the website, you would be able to increase that number.
You'd be able to see the bids.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say eBay, but if someone was familiar with that way, you would be able to see the bids. You'd be able to incrementally move it. But at the same time, we wouldn't let somebody come in and just, the bid ends at 12 o'clock and you could snipe it at 11:58.
Right.
It would roll out until there was no more bidding for a period of time. So there was a lot about that was really interesting and attractive. And again, because we have such a background in it, we see auctions as a really awesome way to do something so desirable on a regular basis, especially in a short market like this, because the market is going to tell you what it's worth.
Correct. Yeah.
So then we talked about just traditional marketing, and in the end, we chose to go traditional, and I think that was more because there's not so much familiarity in doing it the other way. Interestingly, though, there ended up, while we were already in the process of marketing, but before we had come on the market in August, another Frank Lloyd Wright house had come up, and they did do it at auction, and it was very successful. So, when you have something that everybody wants, it's going to bring what it's supposed to, regardless of how you do it, as long as you get it exposed enough to the market. And so we knew that we had to be international. So we had our Keller Williams Luxury International, as well as the Certified Luxury Marketing as venues. We also used a program called Proxio, which is international MLS, because there isn't multiple listings everywhere in the world.
Okay.
So this is a place where you could post it and post the listing, enhance the listing, and then send it out to over 300 agents throughout the world that could then market it and bring someone forward.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yep. So that was available. We did a very extensive, absolutely gorgeous website that was all custom done for this, with all kinds of information that we put out there in all of our ads.
Oh, you spent months on the prep for this.
There was a lot of time in this. And the thing about this was, once you start to enter the internet, you have to let it mature. You can't just pop internet information out there because you can't find it right away.
It takes a while,
Yeah. So we had the time frame of trying to get this information laid out. We also did magazine. We did Unique Homes, which is an international magazine that's in all the airports and private jet ways, and is mailed to the Forbes 1000. So that went out as well. And then it has a subscription as well. So it was in there, and that had a deadline. So that was really where things, that's what drew the line as to when we were going to have it ready. And of course, they were doing the roof, so nothing was ready until the roof was ready. So there was a lot of juggling.
You couldn't do photos while they were working on the roof.
We had a lot of things that we had to just keep moving through the process until it was ready. And the family was so diligent in in their scheduling. And of course, everybody was fabulous. Everybody, the workers were working 24 hours, or not 24 hours, but they were working 7 days a week. So once we were ready to go, we had an NPR reporter who had been in touch with the sellers earlier on. And so we chose to talk to him with what's called an embargo, which meant we would talk to him, but he couldn't release anything. He couldn't say a word to anybody until September 18th, which was the date that the Unique Homes magazine came out.
So that was your grand debut day,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah. And so that was the date, and this came out, and then NPR came out, and then it went to the national NPR, and then I think within 2 hours, the Boston Globe had called us. The union leader had called us. The union leader was up there within 2 hours. The Boston Globe did a phone interview, and we were on the front page of the digital Boston Globe. And then from there, it just cascaded out all over. We were on, Catherine Underwood had come up and videoed for us on Channel 10 in Boston. And then we were in Dwell, and originally that's what I thought would happen. I felt that we could leverage the media and the PR because I had seen it with some of the other houses.
That exposure.
Yeah, and we had a list compiled of probably 80 websites. So as soon as the 18th happened, we sent out our press release. So all this happened at the same time within a 3-hour period, and then all the responses started coming in.
You just dropped a big rock in a pond.
Yeah.
Splash, splash, splash. Yeah. And I was getting on my news feed all the different entities that would pick it up and different websites that would pick it up. It was really wonderful.
It was. We kept a log of it, and the whole family. The family is just so wonderful, and they were so wonderful to just be with and do business with. And so somebody would post they saw it here or there, and we would just keep copying them and keeping track of them.
Right.
And then we had well over 120 inquiries, no question about that. And some of them were aficionados, people that just loved them. I had people that owned Frank Lloyd Wright houses call me just to say, hey, if you need anything, we love our house. What can we answer for you? To sincere buyers that were ready and willing and able. We had people from internationally from Sweden, and we had people from the Orient, from the West Coast. I always felt that probably our buyer would come from Boston, only because we're in such a major metropolitan area, and we have so much cultural museums and things like that. Anyway, and a lot of our interested come from there, are real buyers in the end that submitted offers. Yeah.
I sort of thought maybe somebody who was in the architecture or a similar field might buy it because it's you're becoming a steward of the property as well as owning it. And I do know through the events that happened that a lot of people who absolutely loved it had to have a real heart-to-heart with themselves about, can I live in this house and not change it?
Yep. You're right, because, I don't think anybody wanted to see that house be changed.
Correct.
And so of the multiple offers that we had, they were all people that wanted to live in the house, with one exception, which was the Courier Museum, who owned the other house 2 doors down.
The Zimmerman house.
Yeah, the Zimmerman house. So I do think people did, but I would tell you that the people that wanted it were willing to just, you would walk in that house and breathe it in, and you either got it, like you wanted it and you wanted to be there, or you were like, oh, this is a brick, cement bunker, which people said. And I thought, okay, well, it's not your house.
Not your house, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you also, didn't you also run into some things with, like who owns the plans and some of that stuff as far as the Frank Lloyd Wright Conservancy and what you're allowed to do and have and reproduce and not have and reproduce?
Yeah, well, there are plans that are owned by the Avery Museum, and so reproducing those would be with permission, or they were copywritten. So, we were very careful about what we used, and we spoke with everybody all the way through. And again, I would say Steve Kalil, who was the executor, who was really working on it with us hand in hand, was always there to help me and make sure that we were talking to everybody, making sure that we got all the information we needed and that we were giving the information. The Save Right Foundation was awesome to work with as well, just giving us guidance, and I had just a place to go and find more information if I needed it.
Yeah. I know that in the living room over by the stereo system, which you turned on,
I loved it.
It was
great.
It was old school, but you had on poster board the plans, a copy of the plans. Yeah.
So we were able to reproduce those as the family, but that was as far as it could go. But it was really nice to be able to see them.
It was so cool.
And be able to share them with people when they were coming through the house. I mean, it was really exciting during that pre-marketing stage. Once we had it out there, we had done 2 open houses that were, one was for people who are interested, had requested information about the property. And then we also invited brokers and realtors from New Hampshire and Mass and any place else. So any of the luxury individuals, the luxury websites it was posted on. So anybody that was interested could come, as well as, the historical society people. So we had a lot of people come through, and then that gave them a chance to see those plans and then just enjoy the whole ambiance of the house.
Yeah. And the grounds looked beautiful, and it was just great. It was absolutely great. So ultimately, the purchaser was the Courier Museum.
Yes, the Courier Museum, which is a very unique situation. They're the only museum in the world currently to own 2 Frank Lloyd Wright homes.
Really?
So,
which are the only 2 Frank Lloyd Wright homes in New Hampshire.
Yes.
And they're in the same neighborhood.
2 doors down from each
Two doors
other.
down from each other, yeah.
And they have such an extensive amount of information already on the Zimmerman house and, the groundskeeping. And I've met so many people that we, had met with them more than a few times. And their appreciation and understanding of it all, down to the cups and, this is what belonged here. Because Frank Lloyd Wright would send a picture maybe to the owner and say, or a rug and say, I thought this would look nice in your house. And here's the bill. But he was very specific about, it should be these colors, it should be this. The Kalils actually went to New York City with Morton Delson to pick out all of the fabrics and everything, the Schumacher fabrics, and to bring them back. And they were all, yes, these would be appropriate.
Yeah.
So the Courier was the successful owner. And I think that during the process, there was definitely people that, because no one could say anything about, until we got to the closing.
Right.
There was people that were, thought that it was going to be owned by someone that was going to live there. There was conversation that it was going to be torn down. That was never going to happen. That was never going to happen. But you know how rumors just, happen.
Yeah.
And I think the family was elated to have it be preserved forever.
Forever.
Yes.
As the 2 feet aged Kalil House, and for them to be able to go whenever. And there was people during the process that were like, oh my goodness, if I don't get in here, I might never get to see it.
There were a lot of neighbors and people who had never been inside the house who took the opportunity of those open houses to come in and see it for the first and what they thought might be the only time.
And some of them had never been there. And so you go back to marketing. I mean, we invited every single neighbor in that area, door to door. We went to introduce ourselves and say, we just want to let you know that this house is going to be coming to market, and we would like you to come and see it.
Sure.
Because they were quiet families, and so there wasn't a lot of activity or a lot of people in there.
Yeah.
And now everybody can come see it.
And now everybody can.
Yeah, I presume that the Courier is going to start adding that to the tours, like they have the Zimmerman tour.
Yeah, they're interviewing for docents now.
Okay.
And I'm a member of the Courier, and I believe that it'll probably be late spring. I couldn't really speak for that. They've talked about it being in the spring. They have it on their website. So, for anyone that's interested, certainly I think joining the Courier is wonderful because they're an absolutely fabulous museum.
They're my favorite, yeah.
Yeah, and they have so many different things that are coming in that you can enjoy. And one of the things they talked about, again, I don't really know how it'll end, but is they have a memory cafe at the Courier now, which is for Alzheimer's
I did not know
people.
that.
Yeah,
Oh.
folks that are suffering from Alzheimer's. So they were talking about, having events there. It's very calming. I mean, it might sound silly, but if you've ever had a weighted blanket, I kind of felt like it was the same. It just is really comfortable inside the house. And that they were going to do some other things like that. So there would be events. Now, whether that was during conversation, so I don't know at this point what they're exactly going to do. But we're excited to hear more about it. And we, chat up with them. I keep in contact with everybody.
That is so exciting. So were there any other surprises along the way?
Were there any surprises along the way?
I mean, did it feel like it got out of control for a little bit?
No, not really. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that we did a great job planning it. The amount of people that were interested was exciting, and talking to so many people about it, whether they just loved it or
there was a lot of passion about it.
there really was.
Yeah.
There really, really was. And the amount of Chronicle was there. I think the second day to video. It was a real privilege. It was a privilege to represent them. I think moving forward, if I take that information, I realize that the chance of me selling another Frank Lloyd Wright home in New Hampshire is kind of slim, seeing that there's only 2,
right? Yeah.
And they're owned by a museum now.
Right.
But what I did learn from that was just the specialty marketing that this had, and whether a mid-century certainly I love, but what I've been doing is just becoming an authority of the styles and Frank Lloyd Wright homes, and working with the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation as a realtor, because those are exciting. I spent so much time learning it, and I thought, well, I'm just going to continue this. Everybody has a hobby.
Sure.
This is my hobby, and I loved it anyway.
Well, if you want to take trips to go out and visit any of the other homes, I would love to go with you. We can drag our guys along.
Yeah.
And did you see in the news that Taliesin West is not going to be a school of architecture anymore?
Yes.
I visited there, and I was very bummed about that.
So I wonder, because actually it was in the email, the text thread that the family and I have 4 days ago. So I'm going to be hopeful that maybe something similar like the Courier, where someone came in and donated the money. Maybe something like that'll occur, because it would seem sad.
Right.
A travesty to not have that style of architecture continually being taught.
Right.
But I don't know the whole story, so.
I don't know the whole story either. So anyway, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming as our guest. I'm sure we'll have you and Doug on again to talk about auctions or commercial real estate. So that's it for today. We want to thank you so much for getting real about real estate with Spouses Talking Houses.
Music courtesy of the Eric Lindbergh Trio. Please visit his website at www.ericlindberghworld.com. Jennifer and Brian are licensed to practice real estate in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Brian is also a certified general appraiser in New Hampshire. They are not lawyers, accountants, home inspectors, or therapists. Real estate customs and rules may be different in your area. Each Keller Williams Realty office is independently owned and operated. The realtor name is trademarked to members of the National Association of Realtors. If you are currently under contract with a real estate agent, this is not intended as a solicitation. Views expressed on this podcast by Jennifer may not be shared by Brian and vice versa, nor are they necessarily the views of Keller Williams Realty.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.